I agree. And you can ask them, they'll still come.
Okay. Here we go. So the Ramban unusually has an introduction to Parshas Vayishlach, which is absolutely vital, really, really central. There's so much you can build on it. It's only short; it's one paragraph. But you'll notice that it's unusual in the sense that it's right at the beginning of the parsha, before you even start, like the first posuk of the parsha. Ramban has a paragraph of introduction. He says like this: "Nichtava haparsha hazos." This parsha is written lehudia, to teach us. Ki hitzela kodesh baruch hu es avdoi. That Hashem saves his servant, and redeemed him from the hand that is stronger than him. Vayishlach malach vayatzilehu, sent a malach to save him. And to teach us further, that Yaakov did not rely on his own righteousness. And he tried to save with everything that he had, all his, in other words, all his, whatever he had, all his resources. So in other words, the balance between Yaakov not relying on his own righteousness and also his shtadlus, he's going to put his efforts in wherever he can. So the first point the Ramban has made is on the lessons we learn as to how to approach, and we'll see how he develops this further, right? Yaakov doesn't rely on his own sidkus, and also he tries his best. He does his shtadlus. There is a further hint to future generations. That everything that occurred to our ancestor, to Yaakov, with Esau, his brother, will always happen to us with the Bnei Esau. And it's fitting for us to take hold of the same approaches that he did. That we should prepare ourselves in the three ways that he prepared himself: for davening, l'doron, for a gift, for tribute, to try and appease, and if necessary, to wage war to save ourselves. Livrach, to escape, not sell, and to be saved. And this is something I'm going to develop as we go along, says the Ramban. So the Ramban here understands this, and it's fascinating, right? Again, it's another aspect of Ma'aseh Avos Siman Abonim, but it seems from this introduction that the Ramban takes this first section of Parshas Vayishlach as almost like cosmic level. You know, this is the interaction, this is the approach. I think Soloveitchik develops this as well based on this Ramban, that every detail of this parsha are the clues for how we are meant to interact whenever we are threatened in the future. All of that. You know, the whole way Yaakov approaches this, it has to be our approach. You say, Martin, you have a question?
So, yeah. Say, he quotes,
yeah.
And then Livrafuli not so. I don't understand how that fits in.
Because you got the Yerushalayim first.
Yeah, meaning I think.
So that's the full thing.
No, I think no, because how do we see that Yaakov prepared himself for war? Because he split the camp. So in other words, what? That was part of the battle plan.
Yeah.
The fact that half would be saved and to run away. Right, but the
my business, honestly,
huh?
I run my business, always run my business on this basis.
Yeah, but where's the second Machan? They were all together.
Yeah.
No, the point is, I think
separated out to two camps. They were together, but they were in different.
If you put everything in, if you put all the eggs in one basket, I think that's what it means. Yeah, that's the point. The point is there's the very strong, the whole direction here of what happens here is that Yaakov is a combination of all different things. So there's this Hashem will save me. There's the bitochen, there's the tefillah, everything else, right? There's the practical hishtadlus, right? Shtadlonus has always been a very strong theme in our history for thousands of years, right? The people who are able to approach whichever ruler is threatening us and saying, look, whatever, we don't want to do this, but we have to, etc., etc. I mean, this is playing out in front of us, right? In so many ways, it's exactly the same. Nothing has changed, right? You have to, you grit your teeth and you do what you need to do to save people. You know, that's what it is. literally through your, I mean, this is literally what we're witnessing in front of us, right? And at the same time, and that's besides, by the way, rights, merits, bads, wrong. It's this at the end of the day, the three interactions are all needed at different stages, different times. 100%.
Personally, I wouldn't do it because you kill more people at the end.
Again, like I said, we can end us at 100. Look, I'm not going into the point. Obviously not going into the specifics of this particular circumstance we're in. All I'm saying is that throughout our history has brought out the same thing happened in the same thing happened in many examples of this in the Shoah as well, where people try to bribe out certain things and situations, and whatever. This is what happened. And then, of course, the battle itself. Now, you see how the Ramban develops this. Ramban says, if you look at, so he carries on and says, okay, so the first point he makes is that there's an issue, effectively, and Yaakov is taken to task, according to the Ramban, as to why he approaches Esav at all. If you look good, skip to the end of that first paragraph of the next Ramban. Omrim Bereishis Rabbi. Machzik was Nikela begins a posuk in Mishlei. Omala Kodesh Baruch Hu Hashem said to Yaakov, L'darko hoya mahalech. He was on his way. He was going on his journey. You sent to him. There's almost a criticism of Yaakov. Why did you engage with him? He says. This is a hint to us as well. That sometimes, and this happened to us, he says, that we caused our own downfall sometimes in the hands of the Edomites, the Romans. They became the Romans. He says, look at the Maccabees, Sefer Chashmonaim, he quotes, right? And you'll see that they made a covenant with the Romans, right? The Hasmonean kings. Yeah, he brings a medrash. They came, I think, means they came to Rome. Still might be something else. He also sibas nefilos beyond, and that was the cause of their downfall. First from Sefer Besfarim, he brings Josephus. He says, look into Josephus, look into what Chazal said, and you will see that the whole interaction and what went on at the time of the Chashmonaim, the Malchi Chashmonaim, and Herod and everything else, there was a closeness there, and they led themselves into the hands of the Romans in a certain way. So that's also, again, he brings that all the way through different aspects that we learn from Yaakov's interaction, which play out in the future of his descendants. He says on the next pasuk that, again, skip the first the first paragraph, just go to the second one. It says V'da. Pasuk K. V'da, you should know, he says, Ki hakovod hazeh, this honor shoya Yaakov oseh la'achiv b'fachdoso lema adoni avdecha. He says, my master, and he calls himself your servant. The trend, he says, especially then, was the younger one gives us respect, almost like to the older, to the Bechor, to the first one, almost like he would give to his father. The Torah tells us that we learn you have to honor your older brother. From it says we learn from the Apostle you have to honor your older brother. So this is a serious thing. What's going on with Esau? He hates him. Why? Because he took that firstborn and he took the bracha away from him. But now, what is Yaakov trying to say to Esau? He said, this whole thing is worth nothing to me. This is a technique. What is the technique that Yaakov exercises here? To show him that the whole thing you opposed me about is, at least in Esau's mind, covered, right? Is covered. That's what it is. The better bracha, the firstborn, right? Everything else. I'm telling you, I'm not looking at you like that. I'm saying to you, you are my master and I'm your servant. You see how I'm putting myself in front of you? I'm putting myself down, right? Yaakov is prepared to do that because he wants the solution that he needs in order to ensure that the hatred does not prevail, etc., etc. Now turn to Pasuk Ches, please. That the Ramban understands, and the Ramban is struggling here. Why it is that Vayiro Yaakov Ma'od. Okay, it says that Yaakov sent he sent the messengers, and he says Esau is coming with 400 men. And Yaakov is very afraid. Vayiro Yaakov Ma'od Vayetzalei, and then he divides the Machane. So the Ramban wants to understand what is it specifically that makes Yaakov very afraid, right? And you see that this is a question. Rashi struggles with this as well. And Rashi says that he's worried that he might kill. and he is pained by the fact that he will need to kill others, right? That's what pains Yaakov. So you see, he also struggles. Actually, struggles with what exactly is it? But again, go to the second second paragraph. V'hanireh ve'einai b'inyan hazeh. He says, it seems to me in this matter, ki Esav lo kibel hashluchim kahogen v'lo yishgiach aleihem. That what happened was that Esav didn't accept them. He didn't even look at them. V'lai lo hoyu lefonov. Maybe they didn't even get close to him. He didn't give permission that they should even approach him and come near him and talk to him. So the Torah would have told us that maybe the dialogue. He asked them, how's my brother doing? What's going on? What's been all this year? What have you been doing all these years? Based upon all these things, the whole dialogue would have been spelt out. They're calling him, they're asking how he is. They would relate all this to Yaakov, that he's coming towards him. But the Torah doesn't say that. That it doesn't say they said anything in the name of Esav. It is only the fact that he's the anger that's in his heart, right? And to do this evil to him, which is why he's approaching with this army. Okay? And that's how it is. And therefore he says, the Ramban goes on to say that, if you look at the next paragraph, when it says, and also, he says, he's also coming towards you with 400 men. He didn't answer us for the he didn't send any nice messages. He's coming towards you with an army and an outstretched arm. That's why he's very afraid. And he says, and Medrash brings as well, that the shluchim, the agents, the messengers, they saw a hatred. They saw a hatred. They said, you're behaving like a brother, he's behaving like Esau. But at the end, when he bows, so what changes then? So what shifts it for Esau? If the Ramban is taking this approach, right, that Esau doesn't even want to look at the shluchim, the malachim, what changes? What changes? What is the shift in Esau's approach? Why is it that they seem to get on relatively well? And we know the famous medrash and the debate as to whether he was be'emes, but Esau Soni Yaakov. But that moment, it was honest, it was genuine. However you understand that, at the end of the day, they do have some sort of reconciliation, right? Very important that we understand that it's not a forgiveness. I've spoken about this before. There's no appearance of forgiveness. The first time you find the word forgiveness and the concept appearing is right at the end of Vayechi, with Yosef and his brothers. That's where you see a dialogue of forgiveness, right? So where the brothers are worried that you used to mean Yosef, and then Yosef says, no, it's part of Hashem's plan, right? Whereas here, it's a treaty type of relationship, right? That's what it is. We'll yeah, exactly. So what changes? Says the Ramban like this. Avol Basoy, for the end, when he sees the great honor that Yaakov does him. And he sees that he bows down 7 times until he gets close to him. Nichmaru Rachamov. His mercy is stirred up. And he thinks, and he thinks that he is agreeing, that he is agreeing now to the firstborn, right?
Two things. First, that's nothing to do with Racham.
Oh,
he believes that.
So, okay. So 1 second. Let's see a few more words. A very good point. Let's see. He says he thought that he agrees to the firstborn, right? In other words, what shifts it? The fact that he thinks, well, actually, Yaakov treats me as really as the Bechar, because he's calling me my. He refers to himself as a servant and my master and everything else, right? Okay. And really, the Ramban, I think Leo had your question. So Leo's question was a very good question. That's not Rachamim. Not Nichmu Rachamov. It's just self-interest of Esau. Look, at the end of the day, he doesn't like him any better at all. He's just saying, well, he clearly him taking the Bechara has still made him the meek. Yeah, exactly. And he's still the meek Yaakov, who we thought he was. He's still as well. It's not worth bothering with, right? Says the Ramban, to answer that question, I think, and he's comforted with this, because the hearts belong to Hashem, and however Hashem wants them to go, they'll go. So in other words, what we're saying is like this. what shifts Esav's heart, what makes Esav illogically, right, change his perspective, all the hishtadlus that Yaakov does. In other words, all of those efforts that he puts in, and he has to put himself down, and he has to send all these gifts and everything else, even though he might not want to do all of that. But ultimately he knows, and that's the connection to the tefillah part, that Esav's heart is in the hands of Hashem, and he has to put his efforts in, right?
Or does that show?
And it's enough. No, it's enough to shift it. In other words,
Seriously, does that show that Jews should take insurance and they shouldn't just take it as a lack of emunah by taking insurance? Because, for example, the Belgians, they don't like taking.
So there are those who. It's an interesting question. That's a big debate for a full share. There are chuvas about this. Mainstream view in the poskim is that it's perfectly acceptable to take insurance because it's reasonable hishtadlus. Yeah. It's reasonable hishtadlus. It's normal behavior, right? In other words, if a person does something extreme and unusual and out of the ordinary, then you can question about the concept of bitochen, right? If it's normal efforts. That's part of normal efforts that we do to protect ourselves and that we're expected to do. I'm sure that there may well be stricter views, and those are high levels of bitochen, but that would all be in the realm of one would say chumrah. There's a tshuva of Rav Moshe, at least one tshuva about this, about life insurance. There's a tshuva of Rav Moshe about this. I mean, this is discussed in halacha. But either way, what we're saying here is the Ramban has this fascinating idea that Hashem is in charge, right? And where Hashem wants the hearts to go, that's what will happen. And the reality is, and we'll see, as we'll see now, as the Ramban is pointing out that, again, looking at this whole parsha and the way we interact when we're threatened and with those who wish to do us harm, we have to realize that everything can change, like V'napochu, like the Purim story. Everything can change in a moment, right? We put our efforts in and things can change automatically. Things can change whenever Hashem wants them to change. And he develops this further. Look at Perek, 1 second. Now the notes for the next one.
Was they sort of actually towards Yaakov a little bit of nostalgic for old time's sake?
It's Nichmaru Rachamov. We use that phrase that his heart, his mercy is stirred up. So you could connect that to the familial relationship, sure.
Is there any contradiction between the actions that Yaakov took and the fact that we're saying, well, Hashem directed him in that way? In other words,
there's always free will.
Praise. Yeah, no, but you praise Hashem. He says,
yeah.
He says,
yeah.
So he obviously accepts that. He just feels that he's got to do his bit.
Yeah, it's not it seems like a contradiction, but it isn't really. The fact that that Hashem is in control, but there's free will. So how that interplay works, but both are present. So he says again, skip the first two paragraphs, not because we don't, so we can't do everything. V'gam ze yirmuz. This pasuk when he says v'hoya machaneh nishar lefleita. This pasuk which has such it's such an incredibly emotive words, right? He says if Esau will come along and he'll smite one camp, and the other camp will be there for to survival as a refuge. Now you look at the words that are Ramban, and you realize, right? And you realize through these words how the Ramban is writing this through his own experiences, through the experiences of Jewish history, through the pain he would have seen, in the 12 century persecutions and everything else and whatever, and the difficult times and the positives, everything, right? The Bnei Esau don't decree to destroy us completely. They do evil with a part of us. He's talking contemporary. That's what he's doing. They do evil to us in some of their lands. One king or one ruler seeks to attack us either financially or physically. And another king or another ruler elsewhere has Rachmanos on us, and there's a refuge over there in that place.
He lived in Spain, didn't he? And then he had to escape and go to Egypt.
Yeah, I think so. That was the Rambam. No, but the Ramban also traveled. The Ramban also traveled. The Ramban went to Israel as well. No, so it's not. It's yeah. There's also a life story as to where he traveled. What would be worth reminding us as what that is. But he also made his way to Eretz Yisrael very famously as well. The Ramban. Yeah, but he says the Medrash says if Esav comes to one camp and smites them, Elu achinu shebedorim. These are our brothers in the south. And the machana that remains shall be as a refuge. Elu achinu shebegola. These are our brothers in Gola, which was, I think, in the context of the Medrash, is an area, I think, in Bovel, or it might mean the general exile. Ru'u ki gam l'dorim. Dorim might be Eretz Yisrael or something, right? Ki gam, because that's south of Bovel. Ru'u si ki gam l'doros tirma doros haparasha. He says, you see that this is exactly how it plays out, right? This is exactly how it plays out in future generations. And this is the Ramban speaking on a contemporary level. He's saying, I can see how these words of Ma'achana and Isholef later, that's how we live. That is how we live, right? There's a very famous, powerful Gemara in Bava Basra with the Moiches Asfina, with all the stories. You will be familiar with it when the Rabbi Bar Rachana, they're traveling around and he finds this, they're in a ship and they find a nice island with sand on it, whatever it is, and they get out and they stop on the island and they light a fire. They light the fire. And all of a sudden, he says, the island turns over. And it turns out it was a big whale. They were actually on the back of a fish. And he says, if it wasn't for the fact that the boat was so near, we would all have drowned. And the Marshal says, that story is our experience in Golis, in exile, right? That we're on a ship and we travel around and we find a nice place and it looks safe and it looks tranquil and everything else. And we set up shop, we light a fire and we make ourselves a home and everything else. All of a sudden, it turns over. And if the ship wasn't nearby, if we're not able to quickly escape, I think maybe he could be talked on to holding on to the Torah or whatever, then we would be lost. And that's the Marsha, and that's the Marsha on the Gemara. It's exactly what the Ramban is referring to here. Now, Pasuk of Zion, he says, Dora shel Shema, Dora shel, he says something again, which is so powerful. And yeah, that's right. 1 second, Pasuk of Zion. Let me just see whether it was. No, not Chav Zion. 1 minute. Yes, it's not Chav Zion. It's Chav Gimel. Yeah, it's Chav Vav. It's Chav Vav. It says Vayar ki lo yachol lo. The whole with the Malach and the battle that goes on, and he sees that he can't overcome him, and the Malach is not able to injure him, right? Because he was only given permission to do a certain thing. And then he says, second line into the Ramban, right? Va'omru bereishis Rabbi. They said in Bereishis Rabbi. What did they say there? They said that there is a he touched all of the tzaddikim that were destined to come from Yaakov. Zedora shel Shmad. Very cryptic medrash. This is the generation of Shmad. Shmad means destruction, but really means also those who leave the faith, Rahman al Islam, right? Or Shmad, right? That's what it means, right? Apostasy. The idea is he says there will be a future generation that the descendants of Yaakov Yiskaber Esav Aleim Achi Ekorav L'Kakea Beit Soson, which I think means in order to kind of uproot them. This was the generation, like the generation of Yehuda ben Bova and his friends. And he knows saying, he says, I will give my life for Hashem, as long as they will kill me immediately. I will bedora shel Shmad ein yochel ispel. But the generation of apostasy of Shmad, and I think what he means is those basically people who will be forced. This is the reference. The Rabban understands this reference is a reference to the generations and the whole where Jews have been forced to choose between giving their lives or their faith, right? Whether it's Spain, whether it's whatever the or to defy exactly, or all of these situations. That's what he says. That's what he understands. That the Medrash is understanding what the Malach does when he when he touches Yaakov. This is the impact that it has, right? That he affects him in this way, right? What do they do? They bring sticks of iron and they whiten them in fire, and they put them under their armpits, and they take out this whole terrible persecution. He could be describing the Spanish Inquisition, except he was before the Spanish Inquisition. But other generations, she'osu imonu kozeh. I think so. In the other generations, he says she'osu imonu kozeh. The Yoseram is there. Whatever the Medrash can describe their generations, he says that they've done even worse than this. Vakol sovalnu v'over aleinu. We've been able to bear everything, and it's passed us by. Kamosha Romas v'yova Yaakov Sholem. How does the parsha finish off? Right at the end, after Esav v'yova Yaakov Sholem, that Yaakov always survives. Yaakov comes complete, comes whole. So there is this references there all the way through to these experiences that Yaakov undergoes, and each one, according to Ramban, is a different message, a hint, a remez to what takes place, including those times when we've been forced to either be terrible persecution if we don't give up our faith. There's one final thing I want to show you very briefly. We don't have time to see it inside, but it's just worth seeing because it's so. Again, it's just the Ramban speaking about his own life. It's a beautiful thing. Right much further on, the burial of Rachel, Perek Lamed Hey, Posek Tes Zayin. He discusses this cryptic words, Kivras Haaretz. They journey me base El by Hiod Kivras Haaretz L'Efrosa. There was another Kivras Haaretz. There was something called a Kivras Haaretz to come to Epras. Rashi struggles with this. What does it mean? Kivras Haaretz. It's a measure of land, right? Rashi says it's a distance, right? It's a measure of land. There was another Kivras Haaretz L'Efrosa to come to Ephrosa, and then Rachel gives birth, and then of course she dies in childbirth, right? And he brings that. He brings the Radak, who says that it means the type kivras oretz, like a vras oretz, which he says he uses it to mean eating, and he says it's a length of time from the morning that it takes to walk from the morning until it's time to eat, however many hours that is or whatever, right? It's a way of measuring distance based on how long, between meals or whatever. That's how long the walk was. Now the Ramban says, look at the third paragraph. I wrote this at the beginning. I visited there now, he says. I've gone to Yerushalayim. I've had the merit to visit Yerushalayim. What it means, what it meant to the Ramban to go to get there. So I've been there. This is the 12th century, right? I've been there. 13th century. I've been there, right? And I've been to Kvaras Rachel, and I can see that is less than a mil between Kvaras Rachel and Beis Lechem. You've been to Kever Rachel, right? Where's Beis Lechem nowadays? Even if you look loud for the expansion of Beis Lechem, it's in Beis Lechem. It's right there. It's very, very close by, right? And even if Beis Lechem was smaller then, you know what I mean? It's right there, right? That's why they had to build the security wall, right? Going all the way, you know what I mean? Encircle it, right? The whole thing's a fortress nowadays. So what does he say? He says like Rashi, it's a measure of land. And effectively, this is how it is, right? So he basically says, and the next paragraph is the same thing. He also says, V'chein ro'isi, the next paragraph, she'ein kvura b'Roma v'lo korav lo. There's no kever in Roma or close to it. So what does it mean, right? What does it mean, Roma? We talk about kol b'Roma nishma. Where is that? What is Roma? He says there is no kever in Roma. It's far away. It's in Binyamin, this place called Roma. And therefore he says basically that Yaakov buried her on the journey. Just on the last paragraph, he didn't bring her into the city of Beis Lechem Yehuda, which was nearby where she died. That should be Beis Lechem Rossi Yehuda. Because that will be part Beis Lechem. Why didn't he bring it to Beis Lechem? Because Beis Lechem he saw would be part of Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda, and he wanted to bury her in the area that belonged to Shevet Binyamin, her son, right? It's on the border of Binyamin. Okay, that's how it is. And he says that's what the Targum understands when it says in Yirmiyahu, Kol Baroma Nishma. He says the Targum Yonasan and translates it as Kol Barum Alma Ishtama. That's not a place, but it means on high, right? A sound is that what you often the translation is that the voice is heard on high, which means it's talking about the whole of the Jewish people, etc., etc. So again, I bring this mainly just to show how it's an amazing thing when you see the Ramban writing his Perush on the Torah and saying, okay, but I have now had the zchus to visit Kever Rachel, and I can tell you how close it is to Beis Lechem, which is why he disagrees with the Radak, who says it's a long journey. A long journey. Okay, there we are. Okay, have a very good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All of them-
Um,